Sometimes it's good to be wise, so I decided I could not make just one video. Whoa, calm down. What are these birds talking about? No, sorry. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am going to talk about love today. I'm not talking about the concept of love, I'm talking about this book from Toni Morrison called Love. I have to say, I have tried to put my phone horizontally. I struggle for 15 minutes and I don't have the patience today to try to turn it around. It's really frustrating, and because today I'm recording with the sunlight, because I'm away, I'm not at home, I don't have my ring light, I really have to work with natural lighting, and I'd like to finish this video before the sun is setting, so I'm going to have to record like this for today. I'm really sorry, but this is what I'm gonna have to do. So today I'm talking about this book called Love from Toni Morrison, published in 2003. Toni Morrison is not someone to introduce, but I will introduce her very briefly. So she's an amazing author. I think she really is a literary giant. She won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1993 and the Pulitzer Prize in 1988. It took me a long time to think about making a review because this book is quite heavy. So it took me a long time before deciding I would like to make a video book review. I read this book 3 times, and when I started to work on a book review, I ended up with 15 pages of content of ideas to discuss. So 15 pages, that would be at least 3 hours of me talking in front of my phone. A 3 hours long video, that's too much. So I've decided to break down the content into 3 different parts. So this video today is gonna be a book review. I'll make another video where I'm going to do more of an analysis, where I will focus on the main themes of this book, which are power, patriarchy, sisterhood, loss, betrayal, and also the use of language in shaping and forming memory. So this will be my second video, and then I will make another video where I will have to focus on the 2 main characters, Heed the Knight and Christine, and a few other characters as well. But I felt like in order to produce a work of quality, I couldn't just make one video. So this video is going to be a book review. Sometimes it's good to be wise, so I decided I couldn't just make one video. I had to make 3 different short videos. That's the best idea, I believe. I have read this book 3 times. The first time it was for personal enjoyment. Second time I wanted to understand the themes a bit more. I wanted to explore the themes more in depth, and the third time was to make this video. I have to say, I believe some books should have a trigger warning, and I believe this book should have a trigger warning. Yeah, I believe it should have a trigger warning. Now I have to say, reading this book was quite unsettling and uncomfortable at some points because the topics, the themes are quite heavy and disturbing, so you need to be prepared for that. And reading this book, I don't think it will leave you feeling indifferent. After reading this book, after the first time reading this book, I felt some type of way. So you need to be prepared. This book is quite heavy to read. You need to be prepared for this. So in spite of the title, this book is called Love, but this book is really about all the things that we can confuse with love, such as lust, such as control, obsession, greed. Also, this book leads us to think about the impact of having a loveless relationship, or to live in a loveless community. So this book, Love, is really rich in meaning, in concepts, in images, in ideas. So reading it more than once will definitely help you having a better understanding of the topics mentioned, the themes, and also the depth, because as I said, the topics are really deep. It's really rich, really layered, and as usual, Toni Morrison is really intentional with her language. The words are meticulously chosen. Every sentence has an importance. I mean, her prose is very powerful. That's what I love about Toni Morrison. There is also a rich characterization. If you talk about the characters, there are no flat characters. Every character is complex. You have to be really engaged and active in your reading when you read Toni Morrison. You just don't read. You can read for leisure, but you're also like really involved in what's happening. You have to think about what's happening. You have to use your imagination to have a better idea of who these characters are, about what is going on in terms of the plot, all the unspoken things, the unspoken ideas. And this is why I love reading Toni Morrison, because the reading experience is really rich. I would say it's also really immersive. That's the reason why you need to be prepared before reading this book, because you really get immersed in the atmosphere. So you need to be mentally prepared, especially in this book, Love, because you're immersed in this atmosphere, but this atmosphere has a bit of a Gothic effect. I will talk about it a bit later on, but the atmosphere is really is dark, is quite obscure, so you're really in it, but you need to be prepared. But that's the magic of the reading experience here in this case. Other themes in this book are the complexity of human relationships. We tend to throw the word love around, but is this really love we talk about? Another theme is female friendship and sisterhood, status and power, past glory and legacy, and also patriarchy and the long-lasting impact of patriarchy. Again, it's Toni Morrison we're talking about. There are a lot of other themes that can be explored in this novel, really. Wait. Another big theme is memory, which is linked to legacy. The fact that memory, in particular collective memory, is not always reliable, because memory can be subjective, and the fact that people can rewrite history if people have the wrong intentions. We can see that throughout the character of Bill Cosey. People have different recollection about him depending on their relationship with him and how they related to him. So memory needs to be rooted in truth, so that there is a sense of justice. I think this is an important point that Toni Morrison is highlighting in this book. We can also see how storytelling is subjective, because these different characters talk about their experience with Bill Cosey, and you can see that, for instance, for Heath, she tries to manipulate her storytelling to appear a certain way and to gain a higher status. So we can see that here Toni Morrison makes us reflect on language, storytelling, and memory. One important aspect of this book called Love is actually, and that's the major theme because that's the title of the book, is the way love is actually weaponized, the way love is corrupted, just so that the woman in Bill Cosey's life end up in a state of servitude. They end up being controlled, all in the name of love, all under the disguise of love. So here we really see the danger when love is weaponized against women, just to keep them in a state of darkness, in a state of servitude, in a state where even like the relationships between women is completely fractured and broken up, again in a context where there is a heavy sense of patriarchy. Now, patriarchy is a big topic. One thing that Toni Morrison does is that she always makes us think, she makes us reflect, she really challenges our ways to see the world. And here she wants to challenge us on the concept of patriarchy. Now, when we talk about challenging patriarchy, people like to associate a really negative idea. But challenging patriarchy doesn't mean that we think men shouldn't have important roles in society. It really means rethinking and dismantling a system where women don't really have a place. It's about thinking about a system where there is more justice. It's about thinking about a system where we think about balance, where we think about a fair distribution of power. It's thinking about a system where women have a place, they are allowed to have agency, they are allowed to enjoy freedom, they are allowed to define their identity, and they have some power. They are not used as commodities, they are not used as objects. Women are valued and their rights are simply respected. I mean, it's just a question of basic human rights, really. Because if the main character hadn't committed these crimes, for instance, of marrying a child, he would have a different life. You know, if Christine wouldn't be sent away because she was neglected by her own mother, who was also a victim of patriarchy, Christine would have probably a healthier life. She would have a healthier sense of self. She would be able to do something with her life instead of living with resentment and feeling like she is a flop. You know, in which chapter is it? I can't remember the chapter, I need to look at my notes, but at some point she says, my life is a flop. And I remember reading this and I felt so sorry for her, because you shouldn't feel like her life is a flop. And I just feel like, had these two characters had the opportunity to have their basic human rights respected, they would have a brighter adulthood, a brighter future. But their lives are so gloomy in this book, unfortunately. Beside patriarchy, a big theme is friendship. In this book, Toni Morrison wants to show us how friendship has a healing, a salvaging effect. And this is not the first book that I read from Toni Morrison where she centers on friendship, and I love this because the love in the context of friendship is so important, and it can be life-saving in so many situations. And in this book, in the book Love, and I can also make a connection with the book called Shula, we can see that friendship and the love that happens in the friendship context can be so healing, and it's actually so powerful, especially for Black women. So this is something that she stresses a lot and that I find mind-blowing, really. In this book Love, we have Christine and Heed, who they are living with the impact of a broken friendship, all because of unspoken and unresolved trauma. They let silence, darkness, resentment build up between them to a point of no return, to a point where all the love lost becomes hatred and anger. So they are no longer friends, but they hate each other with a passion. So here we see the impact of a love that was burgeoning, a love that was starting to build up between these two children, because they met when they were children. And because this love has been sacrificed in the context of patriarchy, we see that this love lost becomes hatred, and it actually destroys these two women, because they never get to talk about it. They never get to talk about the reason why their love became hatred. So this love lost actually becomes poisonous, because they don't know what happened, and they don't use language to try to save their relationship, to try to heal their relationship. For these two young girls, Christine and Heed the Night, I love her name, Heed the Night, by the way. For these two young girls, the loss of innocence combined with the loss of their friendship has devastating effect. It has a long-lasting, devastating impact for these two characters. Toni Morrison wants to make us think about the fact that sometimes the love that we experience in friendship can be more significant than the love we think we experience in romantic relationship, and the fact that sometimes the love that we experience in friendship, the bond that we build up with other women, is life-saving. It's a matter of survival in certain communities. So it is a very, very, very important point, and this is something that I have learned reading Toni Morrison, and this is something that I really incorporated in my life, and this also helped me a lot in my personal life, just valuing this type of love and not taking it for granted. In this book, patriarchy is really denounced as a system of oppression because women don't have a voice, they have no status at all, they have no power. Bill Cosey is at the center of everything because he's the man, he has the money. But what is interesting in this book is that here Toni Morrison wants to make us think more deeply, and she wants to draw a picture of what we call benevolent patriarchy. She wants to highlight the fact that patriarchy doesn't have to be violent and brutal to be detrimental for women, because in the case of Bill Cosey, he never uses I cannot say he never uses violence, because marrying a child is a form of violence, but he's not he doesn't use brutality. He's seen as very charismatic, very generous with his money because he's quite wealthy. He has status, but he's using this to manipulate the woman and to keep them under his control. He also uses this to charm people, and because he is so adored in the community, he's completely idealized. He's also idolized because of his status. So people admire him for that, especially in a community where we know that it's not easy to... Sorry, I'm getting distracted on the balcony with all these insects. It's spring, so all these insects are also happy to enjoy the sun, so we try to coexist together. What was I saying? Yeah, so he's a figure, he's like a role model simply because he has money, he has power. But is that all? Is just having money enough for you to be a role model? No. So Toni Morrison shows us that having money and status is not everything. If you have money and status and just that, the way you use power can be heavily detrimental, not only for yourself, not only for the people around you, but for your community as well. In the case of Bill Cosey, he has the money, he has the power, but everything is conditional. He picks and chooses who he wants to help, and it doesn't really create an atmosphere that is healthy, because people start to be in competition for his attention, for his affection, especially women. So it's very difficult to have a sense of solidarity between these women, like Christine, Hit the Night, even Junior, if they all fight for his attention, because the women feel like this is all they have, this is all they can get, male attention, in order to get more status, more power. There is nothing left for them. This is the system they were living in. You can see it in the character of May, who sacrificed everything for Bill Cosey and the hotel, and she ends up with nothing at the end because she hadn't built anything for herself. She doesn't know who she is. She's incapable of giving love to her daughter. So yeah, you can see how destructive it is. I know I'm mentioning a lot of characters. That's because I'm getting a bit too passionate. I will speak about the characters briefly, very shortly, because remember, this video is supposed to be a brief book review. As you can see, the themes are really heavy. One thing that I have noticed while I was reading the book is I did feel like I was reading a Gothic novel because of the stifling atmosphere, and they mentioned the past glory, the fact that the two main characters, Christine and Heath, they are locked in their huge house which used to belong to Bill, who is dead. Bill is dead. So the two characters, Christine and Heath, they hate each other, yet they are locked in this huge house which looks like a mansion. One character, Sandler, says that this house could be seen as a big church or a jailhouse. So you see, you have this dichotomy as far as this house is concerned. It can be seen as a symbol of glory, but it can be seen as a place where you are trapped. You are trapped in the past, you don't know how to move forward. So you have these two characters trapped in the house. They hate each other. Everything is dark, everything is gloomy. These characters are a bit insane. They are not really likable. There are very few physical descriptions about them. We do know that Heed is tiny, a bit goth-like, but Christine is a very beautiful woman, but we don't know much. So both of these women, we don't know much about their physical appearance. It's a little bit like they're also a bit they're enigmatic, but they're also a bit like ghosts. We know they're alive, but their lives at this point, at the end of the 90s, revolves around nothing but hatred toward each other. So their lives are really empty. Other reasons why it felt like a gothic novel is the lack of light. Bill Cosey is dead, but he's like a haunting figure. Everybody is like mesmerized by him. There is this huge portrait of Bill in his bedroom and in other places around the house. Everything leads to him. Everybody is like haunted by the character of Bill Cosey, who is, as I said, very charismatic. People seem to love him for his status, but he also has a dark side that is recognized by most. So he is really this polarizing ghost presence that we can observe a lot in gothic novels. The house they live in this is not a modern house. This is a house that really gives relents of the past glory. So we have a sense of decay, a house that is dilapidated. The house is not a house you would want to live in. This is not a joyful house. And in the sense of this decay, this feeling of things being dilapidated, the two characters living in this house, they have nothing to live for. There's a heavy sense of hopelessness, of despair, of isolation, of loss, which are also characteristics of the gothic novel. So that was very interesting to make the links here. Now let me go back to this book review that is supposed to be straight to the point. So I've spoken about the themes. Now let's talk about, I've spoken about the themes. Yeah, the themes are very heavy. Be prepared. Very, very heavy. But the reading in itself, okay, the reading in itself, I had to read the book 3 times. It's not a big book, but it's quite intense to read and quite heavy. So although it's quite a short book, it might take a bit of time to read it, especially if you're like me and English is not your first language. Short book, but takes a lot of time. I mean, the first time it took me a couple of weeks to finish it. I think 2 or 3 weeks to read it. But when I read it for the 3rd time, it was much faster because I was familiar with the themes, the characters, and the plot. So the 3rd time was much faster. All the chapters have a name. The name of the chapter relates to Bill once again because he's the central figure of the book. All the characters are obsessed with him, and Bill Cosey is like this. He's like this nebulae, like a center of gravity. As you can see, as usual, a lot of highlighting. I love my highlighted books. So the title, love. We have a prologue. It takes a bit of time for us to understand who is talking during this prologue. In this prologue, we understand that the events of the book take place at the end of the 90s, but there are a lot of flashbacks. And we go back to the 50s, to the 60s a lot, because the characters are not only haunted by Bill Cosey, they're also haunted by the past. They're haunted by a vision of past glory. So we go back a lot into the 60s and the 50s. We get to understand that these passages, which are written in italics, this is the voice of Elle, the character Elle. Nobody knows what her real name is, but it's very interesting that this book is called Love and her name starts with the letter L. Maybe her name is actually Love. We don't know. So maybe her name is Love. I know a couple of people whose name is Love, which is a nice name, heavy name to carry, because you have to make sure you represent well. But yeah, beautiful name. But maybe her name is Love. But She's called Elle. The time of the novel is the end of the 90s. The first chapter is called Portraits, I guess in reference of this huge portrait of Bill Cosey, which is looming overhead. The portrait is in his bedroom and she's totally obsessed with it. Second chapter is called Friends, and in this chapter we learn about the friendship Bill Cosey had with a character. So he was a friend, not to any of these women, but to a character called Sandler Gibbons. And to be fair, Sandler Gibbons was a friend of Bill Cosey, and he's a man, and he's the only character in this book who manages to see Bill Cosey for who he was and to see him with an eye of fairness and justice. So he was a friend, he was a stranger. In this chapter, stranger, first thing first, we get introduced to the main stranger of the story, which is Junior. But in this chapter, Elle says that Junior reminds her of Celestial. So Junior and Celestial, they have similarities in the fact that they are seen as wild, immoral women. They both have a strong link with Bill. Junior is a stranger, but she just becomes obsessed with Bill when she sees the huge portrait. Junior never had a relationship with her father. She always longed for a father figure. So I guess when she saw the portrait, she felt like, I'm going to identify this person as a father figure, as the father figure I never had. In a sense, vicariously through Bill, she has a father, she has a protector. So that relationship is not tangible, it's quite imaginary. There's something eerie, something a bit supernatural about that relationship. It's not a real relationship because at the time Bill is already dead. Now, as far as Celestial and Bill are concerned, their relationship was never really confirmed, but I mean, people were never 100% sure, but they did indeed have a relationship. And it happened that toward his death, as he got older, that was an important relationship for him. It was important to the point where before he died, he decided to leave everything to her, to this woman Celestial. So that means she played an important role for him, even though she was seen as a stranger as well, because nobody really knew her, nobody really spoke to her. And every time she's mentioned, she doesn't have a voice in the novel, but every time she's mentioned, she has, like, once again, a ghost-like presence. Chapter 4 is Benefactor. In chapter 4, there is a bit of a focus on Christine, because Christine is the last family member living. I mean, in terms of bloodline, she's the last family member for Bill Cosey, because Bill Cosey lost his son. Bill Cosey's son and only son was called Billy Boy, but Billy Boy died quite early, and Billy Boy had a daughter, and this daughter is Christine. So Christine is Bill Cosey's granddaughter, but they don't have a warm relationship. They don't have a deep connection. So she feels completely neglected, overlooked, and it hurts her. After his death, she ends up with close to nothing. So she wants to challenge this. That's why she hires a lawyer to dispute the will. In this chapter, we learn a lot about the love Bill Cosey had for his son, Billy Boy. And really, when Bill lost his son and his wife, he kind of lost his mind. Bill Cosey was very deeply in love with his first wife called Julia, but Julia died when Billy Boy was 12. So he lost his wife, then he lost his son, so he just lost everything, and I guess he became numb, and that's probably the reason why he couldn't really bond with Christine. There is also the fact that Christine's mom completely neglected her, and Christine felt like she never really had a mom. So Christine has been feeling isolated. She has been feeling alone for a long time. I will go in depth about Christine in another video. Chapter 5 is called Lover. Oh, what's that? Oh, Lover. So Bill only had a deep connection, and Bill only felt love toward his first wife, Julia, and it's mentioned in this chapter called Lover. So in this chapter we have, other than her, because he had said he never felt connected to a woman. So he fell in love with Julia, but after Julia and after the death of Julia, he gave up on love. In a disturbing contrast, he says on the same page about the Knight, who he married when she was a child. She was 11. It seems like he married her only to marry a girl he could educate to his taste. So this is, you see, this is completely criminal. So the only love he felt was for his first wife Julia, but after that there was no love in his marriage to Heath. He married her because he was a predator. The plan was really predatory. The plan was to control her. The plan was to manipulate her. And one of the other reasons is because he had a weird criminal attraction to her. I'm gonna stop here because I cannot talk about this. This is a heavy topic. Chapter 6, Husband. So as we know, Bill did not love Heath, although he married her after the death of his first wife. This chapter talks a bit more about the devastating impact of this marriage, not only for Heath but also for the strong, deep, loving friendship Heath had for Christine. The friendship was completely fractured, broken, smashed. So the friendship is no more after this criminal marriage. Chapter 7 is Guardian. Was Bill a guardian? In some ways, because some people in the community saw him as this wealthy man that helped people out of the plantations, that gave people work. But once again, he was a guardian, but everything was conditional. He picked and chose who he wanted to help. Someone who really sees Bill as a guardian is Vida Gibbons. So Vida Gibbons is the wife of Sandler Gibbons. She used to work for Bill. We have the clear sense that people knew that he was not doing the right thing, but they forgave him because of his economic and financial power. And you know what is striking is that most people felt resentment for Heath. You know, Heath is actually the victim. She was 11 years old when she got married off, and the marriage was actually transactional because Bill acquired her, he bought her. So she was 11, he gave money to the family in exchange for marrying her. There is no compassion for her, and surprisingly enough, the only character who really expresses compassion for Heath is Christine. She realizes that Heath must have gone through a lot of trauma, and she's the only one who clearly expresses compassion toward Heath, toward her former friend. In this chapter, Guardian, we can see that Bill actually fails to be how can I say, a good guardian, because okay, he does provide work for some people of the community. He did help some people out of the plantation, but in terms of morality, in terms of building connection, in terms of bringing positive change, did he do that? And in this same chapter, Guardian, we have the contrasting situation where Sandler Gibbons, who actually lives with his grandson, you see here the link between Sandler Gibbons and Roman, his grandson, and Bill Cosey, who is dead, and his granddaughter Christine. Totally different relationship. So contrary to that, we have a contrast with Sandler Gibbons, who is not well off. He's not a wealthy man, he's not rich, but he's doing everything in his power to take care of his wife with respect, consideration, love, tenderness. He seems to be a great devoted husband to his wife. He's not perfect, but he is doing the best he can for his wife. He's faithful, he's caring, and he's trying his absolute best to be a strong, good role model for his grandson Roman. I also have to say that Roman is an amazing character in this book. This book does challenge patriarchy, but some of the most amazing characters in the book are men. Sandler is a wonderful character. He's a man. Roman, he's my favorite. I have to say, he's my favorite character. He's like a hero in the book. Whoa, calm down. These birds are trying like to sabotage my video. So yeah, Roman is a fantastic character. He's a fantastic character. Chapter 8, Father. We have all these visions of Junior who really sees Bill Cosey as a father figure. What are these birds talking about? We have chapter 8, Father. Chapter 9, Phantom. Chapter 9 is Phantom because yes, Bill has this ghost-like presence. He's haunting everyone. His actions had a lifelong effect on the lives of the women that were close to him. So yeah, that's the picture that we have. All in all, that was quite a heavy read. When I started the book, I really thought this would be a book about how love could be healing. I thought it would be a love story. I thought it would be about a love story, healing people, healing relationships, healing a family, how love can break generational trauma. That's the idea that I had when I picked this book. When I saw the cover, I did not read the summary before reading the book, so yeah. That was a big surprise. But you know, this is Toni Morrison, so this is a book full of life lessons. This is a book that makes people think. I love the character of Sandler Gibbons. He was the one who challenged the idea, the vision that people maintain of Bill. Interestingly, in the book, the only character who were willing to break the toxic cycle of patriarchy were the two men, Sandler and Roman, so the grandfather and the grandson. To me, they were the only two characters who like strongly acted to break the shackles of patriarchy. I think Elle, she was quite vocal about some of the things Bill had done that were not right, but I just felt like she did not do a lot to dismantle it. She is clearly she's wise, but she's also the product of her environment. All she says, so first of all, I did feel she has a very negative vision of womanhood, but her only advice to women is to be resilient, to be strong, to have more control and authority over their life. But how is it possible to do that in a context of unchallenged patriarchy? So for me, Elle tries to help, not that much. She does help with falsifying the will, so that the woman in Bill's life do end up with something, because as you know, originally the will that Bill left instructed to leave everything for his lover Celestial, nothing for his child bride who sacrificed her whole life for him, nothing for Christine, his only granddaughter, his only family before he died, nothing for Elle, who was a cook for his seaside resort, who did everything. Elle even said that beside Bill being the face of the seaside resort, she was doing everything. Nothing for May, who is Christine's mom. May, she is Bill's daughter-in-law. He leaves nothing for her, even though once again Elle says that May devoted her whole life for Bill's hotel. Elle says that she worked a lot. She works her behind off, but she says that May worked even more. She said that May was a slave for Bill. She did everything. She devoted her whole life for the hotel, to the point where she even sacrificed her role as a mother. And what does Bill does at the end? He leaves nothing for her. So Bill really took the lives of these women for granted. He just left them to fend for themselves. Elle wanted to be heroic. She wanted to correct this by falsifying the will. But really, is she really doing something to challenge the status quo, as Toni Morrison wants us to do? Not really. She tries to help with her means. So that's why I feel like she tries to do things, but she's still trapped in patriarchy. She's a product of her environment. I like the fact that this book, although it's not really about romantic love, it has a strong focus on the healing power of is there a word for that, of friendship love. So it was a really transformative read. I need to complete my book review because I can see I've been talking a lot already. I have to admit, I don't think, no, let's start with the positive. Okay, so as usual, the writing is wonderful. Every word is carefully chosen. When you read Toni Morrison, it's always an adventure. You're entering a new world, and in terms of the reading experience, I find it very interesting, the fact that you have to be actively involved. You cannot be a passive reader when you read Toni Morrison. And I like the fact that Toni Morrison does leave some space for our own interpretation, our own imagination. She leaves room for us to think about our condition as human beings, our condition as members of community, as women, young girls. So I found her book heavy, very heavy to read, but I also find them very transformative. For me, there is a sense of social justice, pushing for social justice in her books, a sense of pushing for healing within communities, healing within the self, healing as a society in her book. I feel like she does an impressive job in her fiction work in these aspects. Really, in this book you learn a little bit as you progress in the narrative. As you progress, more things start to entangle from the plot, and you start to understand things a bit better. You understand characters a bit better. You understand the gravity of the situation a bit better. And the last chapter was completely gripping, because on the last chapter, that's where Christine and Heed achieve peace and liberation in a very, very difficult, how can I say that, in a very surprising way, to say the least. So at the end, we achieve peace, and we get to see a lot of our questions being finally answered. So there is something a bit positive in this book, which is great because the book is quite heavy. The tone is very dark in this book. It's not a very luminous narrative. Yeah. The last chapter really holds the key toward salvation, healing, and light. I do feel like toward the end of the chapter, I was like, we can breathe finally. That's why I do feel a big Gothic element where everything is a bit like a reclose, everything is oppressive. We feel like we are trapped in this dark, gloomy mansion. And the last chapter, I did feel the last chapter did feel a bit like, whoo, finally. Now, I have to be totally honest. As I said, I read this book 3 times. I don't think I'm going to read it again anytime soon because as I said, the themes, the topics are quite heavy, and I just feel like I want to read less heavy book, because I've been reading books with very heavy topics for many years, and I want to diversify my books a little bit. And also because I do notice that when I read such books, I do feel I'm highly empathetic. It does something to me. I feel puzzled. I feel completely, I don't know, I don't feel great and in my position, because some of the things I read can be re-traumatizing. I feel like it's good for me to read it to make sense of a couple of things, but it's good also to diversify things and to explore other experiences, maybe more joyful experiences through readings. I'm not saying that I never I'm not saying that I don't experience joyful things. I do. I'm actually a very joyful person. I'm a joyful person. I'm a bubbly, cheerful person who has gone through a lot. So every time I read books like this, it does touch me a bit differently. Covering these things over and over again helps in some way, but I need to find balance too. I need to look after myself too, because at the end of the day I'm still a human being. So as far as this book is concerned, it was quite dark for me. I know I say Shula is my favorite book. Shula is also quite heavy. It's a heavy read, but I do feel like in Shula there is more balance in terms of difficult things to read and brighter things to read happening in the novel Shula. I don't know, I just feel Shula a bit more hopeful, less dark. A challenge from this book as well personally was the non-linear structure. So the narrative is not linear. There are a lot of flashbacks. We go back to the past a lot. This coupled with the complexity of language, for me, once again, as a non-native English speaker, that was a challenge, so be prepared for that. Another reason why it was hard to read this book was I couldn't really feel attached to any of the character. Usually when I read a book, there's a character that I do like, that I root for. I think in this book there is Christine some way, but both Christine and Heath are, I don't know, I can't really tell. Some days when I read the book, I feel for Heath a lot and I'm like, oh, I wish I could hold her in my arms. Some other days I feel for Christine a lot, but I don't know, I didn't feel any specific attachment to these characters. And I guess I'm an emotional reader. I like to feel attached to characters. But yeah, actually one character that I did feel a lot for, a character toward whom I did feel attached, is Roman. Actually, Roman and Sandler, I did feel a connection with them. But beside these two, there was no specific character. So I'm going to come towards an end with this book review. Yeah, I think it was a transformative read, a very interesting read. As usual, Toni Morrison is challenging our perception on things we tend to take for granted, we tend to simplify, or things we sometimes, very often, misinterpret. So here in this occasion, it's love. There are so many things we can confuse with love. She does challenge us on the notion of power and status. Is economic power enough to be a role model? Is economic power enough to forgive crimes? So yeah, just Toni Morrison being the genius that she is. So this is really a book that I recommend to you for this reason, because it does challenge us on a very important notion. Also because this is a book, if English is your first language, you'll have, I guess, more ease to read this. I would say it's a book that you need to read several times, even as a native English speaker, just for the depth of the topics. But yeah, I recommend this book. It was highly thought-provoking. It really moved me. It really had me shook. So yeah, that's it for me. If you have read the book, if you want to go more in depth on some of the things I've mentioned, or if you feel like there are other things you would like to share with me, other things you would like to mention about this book, don't hesitate to leave a comment. Let me know if you have read the book, and let me know which one is your favorite book from Toni Morrison. But for me, still to this point, my favorite book is Shula. Once again, thank you so much for being patient with me. Thank you so much for being patient with me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like or to subscribe if you have enjoyed this video. I'm already self-motivated, but knowing that these videos do help people, or knowing that some people find these videos helpful, interesting, informative, surely brings more external motivation. So thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye. Take care.